Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Saving America welcomes Dr. Matthew Garrett. Dr. Garrett risked his reputation and tenure to question partisan policies and expenditures at his college. He is recently retired professor of history and ethnic studies at Bakersfield College. Dr. Garrett's colleagues repeatedly elected him to campus-wide office, and he received numerous awards, including the institution's Lifetime Leadership Award in 2021. He is also an award-winning author with research and publications in Native American history, and his musings appear in both popular and academic journals. However, Dr. Garrett risked his reputation and tenure to question partisan policies and expenditures at his college. He rallied 24 faculty at his institution to found the Renegade Institute for Liberty, dedicated to civil debate on matters of public interest and to advocate for Western ideals like free speech, free markets, and equal treatment under the law. In 2020, his college issued disciplinary action, and it was circulated to the local media, and Garrett responded with a First Amendment lawsuit in 2021. That suit was later amended to reflect continued retaliation, and after a lengthy legal proceeding, Dr. Garrett and Kern Community College District have agreed on a significant settlement that has made national headlines. Before we begin our interview with Dr. Garrett, here is the statement of the Kern Community College District. It has, to quote, settled all issues with Matthew Garrett. To be clear, the dispute with Matthew Garrett was a disciplinary matter due to his disruptive actions on campus, none of which concerned freedom of speech. Kern Community College District unequivocally supports the right for our students and faculty to share their views and opinions on campus and elsewhere. As this is a confidential personnel matter, we will not comment further. Whoa. I also want to acknowledge that I was a guest on the Bakersfield College campus through Dr. Garrett a couple of years ago. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world truly is full of interesting people. We welcome Dr. Matthew Garrett for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, you didn't doze off while we were doing that long introduction?
No.
Okay, first of all, tell our audience how DEI factored into your dispute with Bakersfield College.
Sure. Well, following the death of George Floyd in 2020, there was a new fervor that crossed the nation, and our college was no different. There in Bakersfield, which had always really been a very moderate, non-political sort of entity, our campus leadership held some meetings and rolled out this new racial equity commitment. And of course, I would imagine you, your listeners, are familiar with the concept of equity. It's about adjusting, controlling outcomes to make sure everything is the same. So racial equity would be to ensure that all racial groups have the same outcomes. And so along with that came a flurry of new programs. We're going to start recruiting faculty based on their race. They instituted a new acronym, which I'd never heard before, URMs, underrepresented minorities, who are going to receive favoritism in employment. And of course, this is not legal in California, which in 1996 banned racial preferences. It is legal in some states to do some sort of quotas and things, but not in California. And so there was this flurry of new activity, energy, new DEI speakers brought in. There was one gentleman they contracted repeatedly and paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell us his political views about why we need to treat one racial group different than another. I remember one contract was $180,000 for 42 hours of trainings. And Dave, you're better at math than me, I think, because of the business background. But I think that's something like $4,200 an hour for
Pretty
DEI
close.
training. So this sort of just insanity was grinding on a lot of us. And so I organized faculty, we discussed, we debated, we raised concerns, pointed out some of the expenditure problems, questioned why money was going to partisan groups, organized a petition to the board to ask them to not approve the racial quotas. The board ignored us and moved forward with the racial quotas, said they needed to reduce white employee population from something like 60% down to 24%, and needed to increase Hispanic population from 30% to 60% or something like that. And so there was this real aggressive move, and we started to ask questions that really grinded, I think, onto the social justice advocates. They did not like having those discussions. They didn't want to defend those positions. And so it escalated with sort of nasty emails on campus and, committee room discussions. It escalated until October 2022, when one of the social justice leaders, a woman who leads the racially segregated classes, brought her students to a meeting, and then her students began accusing me and a couple others of some sort of racial misconduct during a meeting. They didn't know that I recorded that meeting, and so we had clear evidence that they were making it up, but they went from venue to venue spouting these allegations and eventually manipulating the Board of Trustees to believe and take incorrect action based on those allegations.
Wow, something else. Our second question, how did the statement from one of the members of the Kern Community College District Board of Trustees factor into your own situation? He wanted to cull, C-U-L-L, the conservative faculty and take them to the slaughterhouse. So it sounds like he was treating you like cattle.
Yeah, that's Trustee John Corkins, who's a rancher. And when this race hoax was brought to the board, and they brought in a faculty member, a student, a couple of community activists, none of these people have I ever even met, were ranting on about how white supremacy was overrunning the school and it was all my fault and students were being threatened, and this just utter nonsense allegations. In response to that, Trustee Corkins articulated how it was hard to get rid of bad faculty and that he'd really like to treat them like he does his cattle, which is to take us out to his slaughterhouse and end our lives, which was just horribly gruesome, violent language. And really, I don't have any anger or animus towards him over it. I understand if he believed those things to be true, I understand him being concerned about them. But I think I pity him, because it speaks to his naivete that he would believe these really vague, silly, obviously self-contradictory sort of comments. And it really put him in a bad light. It put the school in a bad light. As we went forward through the hearing, it became obvious that everything was manufactured. And I think it left he and the district on the hook for quite a bit of damages. Faculty, not just me, but other faculty, feel very much afraid, intimidated, silenced. There's a recent climate survey that was conducted where dozens and dozens of employees say they're afraid to speak because of this sort of climate, that they know that if they have the wrong viewpoints, they'll be targeted by a social justice leader. They'll manipulate the board to attack them. The human resources or whoever else will target them. And the entire system will come against them if they dare to express a different opinion. So I think that the comment carries a lot of weight and did a lot of damage.
Wow. Well, and our third question is a little bit of a change of pace, because you have now, as we've talked about, been really through the ringer. What is your best advice you can give to a conservative college faculty member in a liberal college, which of course most of them are at the moment?
Yeah, I think that before you do anything, you need to understand that it's a difficult path to go down. It's better to just be left alone, right? Tenure isn't what people think it is. In California, at least, tenure just means that before you're fired, you have the right to a hearing, an administrative court hearing, and that can be quite expensive. The state has essentially unlimited funds at its disposal to litigate and appeal indefinitely. In my case, by the time we settled, I had already lost $500,000 in legal fees and back wages by the time we agreed to a settlement. So unless you're prepared to really do that, they're going to try and starve you out. But if you're prepared to go that route, if you're willing to risk it all to defend, truth, virtues of Western society, like equal treatment under the law and free speech, then there are some steps that I would recommend. One of them is to make sure you have a group of trusted people, because you want some that are public and some that are not so public, because it makes it harder for them to target you. In my case, half the department chairs had signed their names next to mine. There was a lot of institutional strength from that side to make it hard to sort of pick on me a little bit. They still did, but it gave me quite a bit of strength. And then private friends as well. When we got to the hearing, I was shocked at the outright lies that people would say under oath. And it was really quite helpful to have them then turn to committee chairs and say, that's what happened, right? And then the committee chairs would say, no, that's not what happened. And so it was really advantageous to have quite a few friends who were committed to telling the truth because they weren't out to get me. That's not always an option though, right? Another thing to do is to record everything. I recorded everything. I recorded every public meeting I could legally record, and I recommend the same to everyone else because that's what really saved me. They made up all sorts of lies, and a recording made the difference. Also, emails, oh my goodness. They made all sorts of crazy statements that we could easily disprove by email. So make sure you're keeping records. Also, I'd say pick your punches. You can't fight every single thing, right? There's just too much of it. It's crazy. So in my case, the first thing I really took issue with was I gave a lecture on free speech, the importance of free speech, and how I was concerned that social justice activities were infringing on free speech. Now, they went ahead and disciplined me for that anyway, but that was a particularly, I was aware of the optics. I didn't think that they would really be foolish enough to discipline a speech on free speech, but you never really know. But choose your optics, and that really helps also with building community relations. I think that's a key. It's building community relations. And in my case, we probably buried the Board of Trustees in hundreds of letters from the community demanding, outraged by what was going on campus. And so that entailed me having to go to committee meeting groups and saying, look, here's what's going on. Here's some of the evidence. You really should be concerned about the loss of your institution, this ideological capture of your college. And I didn't sign up to be an activist. I didn't want to go to all these meetings, but that became an important part of sort of building a defense against it. And then I think the other thing that I wish I had done was I wish I had fundraised from the very start. I started a fundraiser at the end when it got pretty desperate, but I wish I had started at the beginning because, as I mentioned to you earlier, this is incredibly expensive. And I didn't launch it earlier because I didn't want to feel like I was exploiting people or anything for money. But as it became hundreds of thousands of dollars and I was in way over my head financially, I wish I had started that earlier. So as soon as they begin to target you, maybe it's not too early to start a fundraiser to challenge for a legal defense fee for whatever might come along or something.
Fascinating situation. How can our audience get more information about you and about some of the struggles that you faced?
Well, despite suddenly becoming this public figure activist, I'm really not that public. I don't have a web page. I don't have much of an active Twitter account. But you could find information, I suppose, by Google. There's a lot of news stories. Fox has done coverage. The College Fix and Just the News have both done excellent coverage on the case. I have a GoFundMe fundraiser page that I've suspended, no longer collecting funds, but it still exists. And if you visit that page, you can find a link to quite a few older articles. Authors like Jonathan Turley have addressed it. It's showed up in all sorts of venues. So there's quite a bit of media out there that can be read about, though you're not likely to find much of me on the web. I don't have that much of a presence.
Sounds good. Folks, this has been a special Saving America episode with Dr. Matthew Garrett of Bakersfield, California. Thanks for joining us, and please subscribe on your favorite platform.